Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we're going to be checking out the 5-game NBA slate and the two showdowns in the NCAA tournament playing games, the Wagner Howard game and the CSU Virginia game. But I'm going to go ahead and get into the NBA game slate first, and then we'll get in that college basketball stuff. So we're just going to run through this here. We got 5 games on the slate. We have a decent injury report today, but there's actually not too many, though we do have a couple games that do have several. So let's get into that here first. For the Hornets, Ball, Williams, Martin, and Curry are out. For the Rockets, Sengun, Eason, and Whitmore are out. For the Wizards, Kuzma is questionable, and Avija, Bagley, Ty Jones, Collaby, Sermet, and Livers are out. For the Pelicans, Daniels is out. For the Nets, DFS is questionable, and Simmons and Gilliard are out. For the Mavericks, Josh Green is out. And for the Timberwolves, Gobert and Reed are questionable, and Towns is out. Obviously, the Wizards having a bunch of guys out and Kuzma questionable gives some potentials, and so does with the Timberwolves with Gobert and Reed questionable. That could add some stuff later in the day, but we'll have to wait and see. And if we look at the slate overall, we have 2 high-scoring games in the Houston-Washington game and the Dallas-San Antonio Spurs game. And not too surprising that we're going to find some good value in those games. However, they are pretty risky. There's nobody that I could find that I was like, man, I'd have to play that guy. There's a couple guys that are very close, but they all carry a lot of risk today, and prices are, while they are low for some of these guys, these high ceilings and low floors really do muck it up a little bit in this one. But we're gonna go and get into the top plays here. So we'll start with Luka. Now Luka is $12,500. Now he did miss a game, but he is back and he scored 60 fantasy points against Denver. I look for him to have an absolute monster game here against the Spurs. In the 3 games for the Spurs this year, he's averaged 68 fantasy points, so he's a great play on the slate. He was very close to being a core play. The only thing that really holds him back is that he's been a little bit gimpy lately, but I do think he's going to have that monster game again. And Dallas is the highest scoring game on the slate, and that gives him a lot of potential here. So I'm just going to set him in there, but you definitely don't have to use him as a core play. It's hard to use a guy that's 12,500 as a core play today. Looking at Fred VanVleet for the Houston. Now, Houston is an interesting team today as they do face Washington, and they have actually been really solid against Washington last game 2 games ago. I expect them to do similar type here, only this time it's on the road. However, I do think this game has a lot of potential. Obviously, the Rockets are up and down, though, but they've won 7 of the last 8 games, so that is very interesting here. VanVleet has been the most consistent player for Houston during that stretch, and even though his price has come up some, he's definitely a viable option on the slate. Looking at Jalen Green, he's another guy for Houston that I do like today, though his price has come up a lot, and so he's no longer like a great play. And his floor is too low for this game, but he has had some monster games, and he's definitely capable of that in this one. He actually had 51 fantasy points the last time against Houston as well. Against Washington as well. Whatever Houston does today will make or break the slate. If you go with a bunch of Houston guys and they do well, then that will cash, and if you don't and they do well, then you will not win. That's basically the catalyst team of the day, at least up to this point. Now the Wizards questionable tags and the Timberwolves questionable tags could definitely open up a little bit extra, but I do think Houston's going to be the catalyst of the slate. Then we're going to look at Jabari Smith Jr. here. Now Jabari Smith is also priced up some, but he's played pretty well the last couple of games. He's had a couple of low floor games in that stretch, but he is capable of a solid game here, and he has some good potential against Washington, even though he didn't do particularly great in the last time where he only had 5 rebounds. But I expect him to try to get double-double here and have some potential. Again, this slate is going to be run by Houston, so we'll have to wait and see what they do here. So looking at Jordan Poole for Washington, now he has been inconsistent throughout the year. He has improved recently. He is back in the starting lineup, it looks like, today with all the injuries here. He did start the last game as well. Now, he has been a little bit streaky throughout the year, and his minutes are kind of inconsistent, but he's definitely somebody to consider on the slate. He's priced okay. I don't love his price, but I don't hate it because he does have that upside in this matchup. He's definitely a GPP play on this one. Amin Thompson for Houston is also very interesting today. His minutes have increased some. He's also started the last 3 games. He's been good in the last 2. Last time versus Washington, he scored 46 points, so he has that high ceiling and that low floor, as he's had some sub-20 fantasy point games lately. But he's got a lot of potential in this one, and if you want to stack up Houston, then he's definitely one person to consider there. Oops. Then we're going to look at Trey Jones for San Antonio Spurs. Now, he's been one of the more consistent players for San Antonio throughout the season. He does have a tough matchup here against Dallas, which is why he's not a core play. Because if he wasn't playing Dallas today, I probably would have made him a core play. He's priced pretty fairly here, so he only needs 28 fantasy points to pay off here. However, he does carry some risk as he will be dealing with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. So don't love him because of that, but I do like him okay. He's kind of a contrarian play today, and he has some potential, though he has not done well against Dallas this season, only 20 fantasy points a game in those three. But he definitely does have that potential to have a decent game. Looking at Brooks here for Houston, now he's cheap here, but he has a extremely low floor. He has had some good ceiling games the last few, and he can get up to 30 fantasy points. He only needs 23 to pay off here, but as you can see, he has a lot of sub 20 fantasy point games throughout the season, and that is really the concern here because he's not a big, fantasy output kind of guy, but he has been playing more minutes, and he does have that potential. The way that Houston's been playing too, he has improved some in their current in their current streak of 7 out of the last 8 wins. 7 wins in the last 8 games. So he's definitely in consideration, but he's a GPP Hail Mary play at best. Rashawn Holmes is kind of interesting today. His minutes have been sporadic, but he does have some upside in this matchup. He did miss a couple games, so he came back and he's been a little bit gimpy, but I do think he has a really solid opportunity here for a big game, though he does carry a lot of risk. And even though he hadn't done well against Houston this season, his minutes have been on the rise, and with all the injuries to them, he has some potential. Then we're going to look at Justin Champagne. Now, sorry if I'm butchering your name. So this is going to be an interesting pick because he's only played a couple of games so far this season. As you can see, he's actually made it into a game 6 times, and only 2 of them has he played over 20 minutes. However, in those 2 games, he scored 29 and 32 fantasy points. His price came up to $4,200, but that's still manageable here. And this is a better matchup than either of the 2 matchups he's had. He should draw the start today. We do want to confirm that when we get close to the slate. But he would be very close to being what I would call a core play on this one, simply because of those 2 games. Now, obviously, there's no sample size here to speak of, but he's definitely somebody that I would consider as a possible play on this one. And then finally, we're going to look at Derek Lively Jr. The second for Dallas. Now, he is back from his injuries, and he hadn't played very much minutes lately, but he does have some potential today. He's just been kind of gimpy in the last few, and while he does have big upside, he has a low floor. He's kind of a Hail Mary play, but he's done well against the Spurs so far this season in the 2 games, so he's definitely worth a look here, but he definitely carries a lot of risk. You can also consider Jamal Murray, Zion Williamson, Jeremy Sochan, Devin Vassell, and Aaron Gordon on the slate. They'll have some potential today. But I do like the Houston-Washington game, Dallas, San Antonio Spurs game from a fantasy perspective. And then, of course, Denver and the Pelicans definitely have some utility. I would steer clear mostly of the Charlotte-Orlando game. There's just not much to like there unless you want to get some Jonathan Isaac on this one here. But he's priced up a little bit, so do keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and move over to the in-college basketball slate. We have 2 playing games today. This is Wagner and Howard and Colorado State and Virginia. These games are pretty tight, with Howard being a 3.5 point favorite at 128 total points, and Colorado State being a 2.5 point favorite at 120 points. Obviously, I'm going to just talk about this Colorado State Virginia game real quick. This slate for this particular game is absolutely terrible. Virginia is a slow down team. They're the slowest team in the country. I can't believe they actually got in on this. This is ridiculous. But they do have 3 guys that can play. That's Dunn, McKinney, and Beekman. Now, Beekman is their best player, and he has the most fantasy upside on this particular game, especially with the way that they play. But he is very pricey, and it's going to be very difficult to make him the captain, considering the fact that you have not a whole lot of value left other than maybe Cartier for CSU. The question here is you could kind of go with Dunn or McKinley as your captain here, as they're both pretty cheap. The problem with Beekman's and Stevens and Clifford and Sprout is they're pretty expensive, and it's going to take more value plays to help get them there. And if we look at our fantasy point output over this season for these guys, there's just not much here that has done well. I mean, I do think Cartier and Groves have some potential. I do think Rode has a little bit of potential as well, but there's really just not much. Palmer and Strong have had some uh, good games, but they've been largely up and down throughout the year. So this I would probably just avoid this particular game, but if you think you can figure out these value plays, then you could definitely find a way to make a really quality lineup, then go for it. But I do think you're going to have to go cheap at the captain simply because you're just not going to have a lot of money. And you're going to have to use at least two guys that are, in the sub 6,800 range here to even build a quality, to build any kind of lineup at this point. And as you can see, if I take off any one of these six, I'm still in the negative money. So we're looking at 4,000 uh, there with both Dunn and McKinney, who are the cheapest plays of the guys that actually have a lot of potential in this game. So let's go ahead and move over to the college basketball game against Wagner and Howard. Now this game has a lot of potential to be very fun for fantasy, as both of these teams are priced pretty fairly, and there's some nice value plays that we can find as well. Now my two favorite plays for captain are going to be Bryce Harris and Dockery. Now Dockery is a cheaper play that has some utility here, but looking at Harris, he's the best overall player in the game, and he's got the best fantasy upside. He isn't the most expensive either, though he does have he's not had too many low games this season, so he definitely has a lot of upside in this one. He's averaging 33 fantasy points a game, and that is the tops on this particular slate, as you can see. Um, Council is a little bit overpriced for Wagner, and I do like Harris a little bit better. He's a little bit more efficient and more consistent than Council is, and that's why I've gone with him there. And then for Dockery, he's cheaper than he really should be. He's just a little bit underpriced here, and so he's definitely interesting and worth a look. He definitely has some captain potential because he can help you boost up with some better plays on the slate. Obviously, if you want to mix in some of these these Wagner players like Council and Allen, then you can definitely get him up in that captain to kind of help you with that. Now, I do have one value play for this game, and that's Javier Esquerra. This $3,400, I think he's mispriced because I don't know that DraftKings had his stats right. If we look at his season log, he's been playing a lot of minutes every single game. Now, he doesn't do a ton fantasy-wise all the time, but he has a lot of potential in this game as he's playing a ton of minutes, so he's definitely worth a look here. So I think he's a great value play for this team, and that definitely helps you pay up for other options. It's nice to actually have a value play that feels really good on this particular showdown captain game. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.